When we are told that something rests in our room, something that does not belong, our first instinct is often suspicion directed outward. We wonder what stranger has crossed our threshold, what intruder has trespassed into our quiet domain. Yet, the most alarming truth is not that danger comes from outside, but that it makes its dwelling inside, often under the disguise of belonging. And because it wears the garments of the familiar, we allow it to sit undisturbed. The greatest weight you carry is not the burden on your shoulders in the public square, but the burden that lies beside your bed in the secrecy of night, whispering into your ear with a tongue you have mistaken as your own. You must see that the things we call ours, our pride, our envy, our secret sins, our pet hatreds, these are not ornaments of our personality, but squatters in the chambers of the soul. They promise warmth, they promise identity. They promise to defend us from being small or unnoticed, yet in the end they consume the very oxygen by which we might live. Imagine a room where the air is heavy, the curtains drawn, and a shadow rests quietly in the corner. At first you say, "It does not trouble me, it does not strike me down, I will let it be." But as the days pass you find the air growing staler, your lungs a little weaker, and still you tell yourself that what does not bite does not bind. And yet, it is already binding you, for its greatest strength is not its roar but its silence, not its assault but its occupancy. What is most treacherous is not what storms the walls, but what shares your table. The unexamined grudge you nurture like a friend, the lust you excuse as human weakness, the bitterness you crown as wisdom, the secret indulgence you keep hidden like a jewel. These are not your companions, they are your captors. The room you live in, the interior chamber of your being, was meant to hold glory, peace, the fragrance of goodness, the sunlight of joy. But when the wrong guest is allowed to stay, all the furniture must be rearranged around it. All the windows must be dimmed to keep it comfortable. All your waking and sleeping hours are bent so that this hidden presence is not disturbed. You call it part of you, but it is not you. It is the thief who has learned to speak in your voice. It whispers that it makes you strong, but truly it makes you weak. It says it shields you from being hurt, but really it numbs you from being healed. And all the while, your soul, which was meant to walk upright in light, bends itself lower and lower until you have mistaken stooping for standing. Consider a man who has carried a stone in his pocket for so many years that he forgets it is there. At first, it seemed light, insignificant, perhaps even useful to fidget with in anxious times. But as the years accumulate, the stone grows heavier in memory than in matter, and his gait is altered, his balance affected. He begins to walk as if the stone defines his very posture. When asked why he limps, he shrugs and says, "This is my nature." Yet it was never his nature. It was the hidden weight. So it is with the hidden thing in your room. It is not your nature, though it pretends to be. It is not your friend, though it smiles at you. It is not harmless, though it remains quiet. It is the weight that keeps you from rising, the shadow that keeps you from shining, the mold that grows in the silence and spoils what was once alive. The danger of such a presence is not only that it drains you, but that it teaches you to love the chains it clasps upon you. What is familiar becomes comforting, even when it kills. The prisoner who has spent too long in his cell may dread the open field more than the locked bars, because the darkness has become his language, and the walls his calendar. So also the thing in your room convinces you that without it, you would be less yourself, when in truth without it you would be more than you have ever been. It teaches you to cradle it like a pet, when in reality it is a parasite. It persuades you to guard it like treasure, when in truth it is rot. And because it whispers, "Remove me later," there is no urgency, you delay, and delay becomes decay. That is why the voice commands, "Remove it fast." Not because it has grown mighty in a moment, but because every moment you wait it grows deeper roots in your soil. You have seen vines grow along the side of a house. At first, they are beautiful, a touch of green life decorating the stone. But as years pass, the vines thicken, their tendrils pushing into cracks, widening them, weakening the structure. What began as adornment becomes destruction. So it is with what lives in your room. At first, it appears to decorate your soul with color, perhaps giving you charm, wit, boldness, allure. But as time passes, it presses into the cracks of your being, prying them wider, turning fractures into fault lines. And one day, the house cannot bear its own weight. The vines did not strike in a single blow, they conquered by slow embrace. That is why it must be torn down before it embraces further. We fool ourselves into thinking that what is near is harmless, because we see no dramatic collapse. Yet the most dangerous things are those that kill slowly, for they are patient enough to wait until you forget they are there. Poison in a cup does not always burn the lips. It sometimes tastes sweet, while the heart silently stops. That is why you must examine the chamber of your soul with eyes sharpened by truth, for what hides in the corners does not declare itself. It is discovered only when you admit that the stale air in your lungs is not natural, that the shadows in your sleep are not imagination, that the weight you have carried is not inevitable. To see is the first step to freedom. To recognize that the guest is not a friend, but an enemy is the only way to open the door and cast it out. Yet, how stubborn the heart can be in defending its own destroyer. The man with an infection clutches the wound and says, "This pain is part of me. I cannot let it go." The woman with a chain around her ankle polishes it until it shines and says, "See, it is jewelry." So we excuse what ruins us, because we have grown accustomed to its company. But the command comes clear: it is in your room. Remove it fast. The words are not a suggestion, they are a rescue. They are not an intrusion upon your privacy, they are an invitation to life. For your room was not built to be a tomb, it was built to be a temple. And no temple can house both light and rot. You must choose which dwells there. And the choosing is not tomorrow, but now. The urgency of removal is not in the sound of alarm, but in the quiet whisper of truth that tells us delay is destruction. When something foreign and vile takes residence in your room, the danger is not that it will explode with fury in a single moment, but that its patient stillness will numb your sense of time. You imagine you have days, months, perhaps even years before its presence truly matters, and so you allow it to stay. But the whisper, the voice that cuts deeper than thunder, tells you that every heartbeat of delay is already a surrender. What needs to be removed does not grow weaker by waiting, it grows stronger. The cords do not loosen with time, they tighten. The fire does not diminish by neglect, it spreads. Delay does not soften the blow, it multiplies it. And so the command is urgent not because the guest is loud, but because it is quiet. Quietness can be the most dreadful signal of all, for what kills without noise often kills beyond notice. Think of the man who notices a leak in his roof on a dry day. He says, "It is small, I will tend to it tomorrow." But tomorrow the rains come, and what was once a drip becomes a stream, and what was once an annoyance becomes a flood. Delay turned inconvenience into destruction. Or consider the farmer who sees weeds sprouting between his crops. At first they are tiny, fragile, hardly worth bending to pull out. He says, "I will let them be, for I have larger tasks at hand." But as weeks pass, the weeds rise taller, stealing sunlight and drinking the water meant for grain. And by harvest time, the field belongs more to the weeds than to the wheat. Delay transformed opportunity into loss. So it is with the things hidden in the chamber of your life. What you tolerate today will rule you tomorrow. What you excuse in the morning will accuse you in the night. And what you postpone casting out will one day cast you down. It is a strange trick of the heart that we are quick to act when the danger is loud, but slow when it is subtle. A fire in the street makes us run at once, but a slow poisoning of the air in our homes makes us sit idly by, pretending not to cough. We are trained by noise, but true peril is often soundless. The whisper of truth is not accompanied by horns or sirens, yet it carries greater weight than any clamor. The whisper says you are losing more by waiting than by acting. The whisper says your delay is not neutral. It is destruction disguised as comfort. The whisper says now is mercy, later is judgment. And those who listen to the whisper live while those who ignore it find themselves wondering how a shadow grew into a storm. Consider how a man falls asleep with a candle burning beside his bed. The flame is small, its glow even comforting, and he tells himself that when he stirs in the night, he will snuff it out. But sleep takes him, and by dawn the flame has found the curtain the beam the house. He awakens not to comfort but to smoke, not to rest but to ruin. Delay was his destruction. He thought he had time, but time betrayed him because he betrayed time. What destroys us often asks for nothing but patience. It needs no sudden strike, only our permission to wait. That is why the whisper insists upon speed. You imagine that swiftness is for those in panic, but no, it is for those who understand reality. Panic runs without direction, urgency moves with purpose. The difference is vast. The whisper is not commanding frenzy but focus. It does not say, thrash wildly, it says, act decisively. The removal must be fast, because your room was not designed for sharing with shadows. The longer the guest remains, the more it rearranges the furniture, until you cannot remember what freedom looked like. The faster you act, the quicker the air clears, the brighter the windows open, the sooner you breathe. Delay is the great thief of breath. You tell yourself that tomorrow you will cast it out, but tomorrow comes, and you discover the roots have sunk deeper. The vines have climbed higher, the shadow has grown thicker. Tomorrow is always weaker than today. That is why the whisper says, do not wait. There is a secret deception buried in the human heart, the lie that one more day will make no difference. One more day of indulgence, one more day of bitterness, one more day of apathy, one more day of silence. But every day matters, for days are not stones stacked side by side, they are seeds planted in soil. What you plant today grows into what you harvest tomorrow. One day of delay plants one more weed, and weeds grow faster than wheat. You tell yourself that a single weed is nothing, but a single weed has within it the promise of 1,000 more. The command to remove it fast is not harsh, it is merciful. It spares you from reaping fields of ruin that began with one neglected seed. Think of a ship sailing upon the sea. A small crack in its hull allows water to seep in. The captain says, "It is minor, we will patch it at the next port." But with each mile, the water gathers, the weight increases, and the vessel sinks lower. By the time the port is near, the ship is already too heavy to steer. What was once a repairable leak becomes an unstoppable flood. The urgency of the whisper is like the call of a watchman who sees the water creeping where no water belongs. It does not shout to terrify, it calls to save. Remove it fast, not because the crack is wide, but because the sea is patient. When you hear such a command, you must resist the temptation to argue with it. The heart is clever in making excuses. It says, but this thing is small. It says, but this thing is hidden. It says, but I am stronger than it. It says, but I will deal with it tomorrow. And so the whisper must cut through with its one unyielding truth: delay is destruction. It does not matter that the thing is small, termites are small, yet they devour houses. It does not matter that the thing is hidden, roots are hidden, yet they split stones. It does not matter that you think yourself stronger. The man who holds a snake by its tail may feel powerful, but the snake feels patient. And it does not matter that you promise tomorrow. Tomorrow has never yet come to rescue anyone. The only moment given to you is this one, and this one is enough for obedience. The command to remove it fast is not a burden but a gift. It is not a chain but a key. It means you are not abandoned to rot with the shadow. You are not fated to live with the weight. You are not doomed to breathe stale air forever. The door is open now. The chance is real now. The invitation is clear now. The urgency of truth is the urgency of love. For love will not let you waste away while believing you are fine. Love says now. Love says do not wait. Love says your life is worth too much to spend another hour sharing your room with death, disguised as comfort. That is why the whisper comes not with thunder, but with quietness, for thunder can frighten, but quietness pierces. You may ignore a shout, but a whisper in the soul cannot be drowned. It lingers, it follows, it presses, until you admit that delay is already defeat. A room once cleared becomes not empty, but filled with light, where fear has no furniture to sit upon. Many tremble at the thought of removing what they have carried so long, because they imagine that in losing it they will be left with nothing. They believe that to sweep away the shadow is to be left with bare walls, hollow silence, a vacant chamber echoing with loss. But this is the deception of darkness, that in leaving it behind you will find yourself abandoned. The truth is quite the opposite. Once the weight is lifted, the space is not void but vibrant. The light does not enter timidly, it floods. The air does not trickle in, it rushes. And suddenly you discover that emptiness was never your destiny, fullness was. The cleared room is not desolate but radiant, not barren but fertile. Consider how a window long shuttered transforms the moment it is opened. Dust flees, curtains stir, beams stretch across the floor, and what once seemed a small cell becomes a chamber of beauty. Nothing new was built. Only what was blocking the light was removed. So it is with your soul. Fear tells you that the thing you cling to is necessary, that if you release it you will collapse, that if you sweep it out you will be left with nothing. But the moment you obey, you discover you were never made for clutter, you were made for clarity. The furniture of fear is heavy and creaks beneath its own weight, but the presence of light needs no chair, for it fills every space, resting on every surface, entering every corner. Fear always demands a throne. It insists upon a place to sit, a cushion to rest upon, a stage from which to speak. That is why it arranges itself in your room, setting itself in the center as though it were king. But when the room is cleared, when the intruder is cast out, fear finds no furniture left. It wanders about, searching for a seat, but there is none. And so it departs, for fear cannot rule where there is nothing to support it. You see, fear is not a master by itself. It borrows its authority from the space you provide. Remove the seat, and fear is dethroned. Remove the clutter, and fear is silenced. It was never strong in its own right. It only pretended to be, because you gave it furniture to sit upon. Think of a banquet hall where a false guest has sat for too long. Plates are set before him, songs are sung around him, and everyone forgets he does not belong. When finally he is ushered out, you do not find the hall emptied of joy but restored to it. The chairs are no longer taken by deceit, they are ready for truth. The cups are no longer filled with poison, they are ready for wine. And so it is with your room. Clearing it is not subtraction, it is restoration. It is the return of what was always meant to dwell there. We often fear silence because we mistake it for loneliness. But silence in a cleared room is not loneliness, it is peace. The absence of noise is not the absence of presence, it is the beginning of true presence. Light does not shout, but it fills. Peace does not clamor, but it abides. Joy does not hammer, but it sings softly until the walls themselves seem to hum. When you remove what has corrupted, the quiet that follows is not emptiness but harmony, the natural music of a soul restored. Imagine a man carrying a sack of stones upon his back. Each stone is a memory of bitterness, a regret unspoken, a jealousy nursed in secret. He believes that to lay the sack down would be to lose part of himself, that he would be smaller, diminished. But when finally he casts it off, he does not shrink, he rises. His back straightens, his step quickens, his chest fills with air. He realizes that the sack was not him at all. It was only a weight pretending to be his stature. His strength was not in carrying it, but in letting it go. And the ground where he stood now seems brighter, for light falls differently on those who stand unbent. The cleared room is not an empty prison cell, but an open garden. Life rushes in where death once sat. Possibility blooms where despair once withered. And what is most marvelous is that the light does not have to be invited as a stranger. It was always waiting outside, pressing at the cracks, eager to enter. The moment the obstruction is removed, it flows in as though it had been longing for you all along. That is the miracle of removal. You do not end with nothing. You begin with everything. Fear tells you that its departure will leave you shivering, exposed, vulnerable. But light covers more surely than darkness ever could. Darkness hides you by blinding you, but light clothes you by revealing you. Fear requires constant feeding, constant arranging, constant effort to maintain its seat. But peace asks for nothing, because it is content simply to be. Fear clutters, peace simplifies. Fear weighs, joy lifts. Fear suffocates, love breathes. In the cleared room, fear has no chair, no table, no throne. It wanders outside, unable to settle, and you discover that your soul has room again for the one who truly belongs. Think of a child who has lived long in a house crowded with shadows. The windows covered, the lamps dim, the corners filled with whispers. The child begins to think that this is the natural way of living, that to walk carefully among the shadows is the only way to survive. But then one day the curtains are flung wide, the windows opened, and the shadows flee before the light. The child gasps, not at emptiness, but at color. Walls bright, air fresh, space wide. For the first time, laughter feels possible, singing feels natural, hope feels near. That is what it means for the room of the soul to be cleared. It is not subtraction of comfort, but restoration of wonder. You must understand that fear has no furniture in a room of light, because light itself becomes the furniture. The beams stretch across the floor like a rug. The warmth sits in the chair like a companion. The clarity adorns the walls like artwork. You do not sit in emptiness, you sit in radiance. Fear cannot survive here because it cannot compete. It has no seat to claim, no cushion to rest upon, no platform to stand. The light fills every place it might have rested, and so fear is left wandering, powerless. And what follows is even greater. Once the room is filled with light, it becomes a place where others may enter and find rest as well. A cleared soul does not only bless its bearer, it blesses every guest who crosses its threshold. When you breathe peace, others breathe easier around you. When your walls echo with joy, others hear music they had forgotten. When your windows shine with hope, others see a way forward. The room cleared and filled with light becomes not just your sanctuary, but a beacon for others. What once was a chamber of shadows becomes a house on a hill, guiding those who wander. The fear of loss must be broken by the vision of gain. You are not losing when you sweep away the intruder. You are gaining the life that was waiting outside all along. You are not emptying, you are filling. You are not left without, you are given within. And as fear departs, so too does its kin, shame, despair, anger, bitterness. Each leaves because the chairs have been taken away, the tables overturned, the thrones dismantled. They have nowhere to sit, and so they must go. The light is not polite with them, it occupies until they flee. And when they are gone, the silence that remains is not void, but peace.